Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Schaefer. I'm the Associate Director for Graduate Student Success and Professional Development with the Graduate School. This is our second of two Career Pathways guest speaker sessions this semester, and this one is on career pathways in higher ed outside the professoriate. And I am thrilled to have very special guests who are all friends and colleagues of mine, either currently at UTSA, formerly at UTSA, or just a part of my professional network. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Latanya L.T. Robinson, serves as the Senior Vice Provost for Student Affairs and Dean of Students at the University of Texas at San Antonio, where she leads the university's Student Affairs Division with vision and purpose. In this role, Dr. Robinson provides strategic oversight to 10 departments dedicated to fostering a vibrant campus experience, promoting personal development, and advancing student well-being. As a proud first-generation college graduate, she brings a deep personal commitment to supporting students from similar backgrounds. Throughout the 25 years of her career, her leadership is grounded in a belief that every student deserves to feel seen, supported, and empowered to succeed, both in and beyond the classroom. So if you can all welcome L.T. Robinson. Next, we have Dr. Lorena Roa de la Cruz. Dr. de la Cruz is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas at San Antonio, where she studies stem cell biology and male germline development using single-cell transcript. You're making me work for this. Transcriptomics? Okay. She also serves as chair of UTSA's Postdoctoral Association, where she advocates for postdoctoral professional development and community building. Passionate about translating research and leadership into broader impact, Lorena is exploring career paths outside the traditional faculty track that leverage her scientific expertise and commitment to support the research community. And then my dear friend Maggie, who is coming to us from Wisconsin. And Maggie, I always butcher the first half of your last name. I think I always pronounce it incorrectly, so we're gonna just give it another go, and you can correct me. So I'm happy to introduce Maggie Netsheim Hoffman.
We're going to go with the German Nettesheim.
Nettesheim. Okay.
Nettesheim.
So the H is silent.
The H is silent. Yeah.
There we
so
go.
Think of it like a German phrase. It's Nettesheim, right?
Exactly. Maggie is an award-winning graduate education reformer committed to advancing graduate education and building sustainable programming initiatives. In her role as the Director of Graduate School Community Initiatives and Student Experience at Marquette University, she has built collaborative communities of practice engaged with Milwaukee-based nonprofits designing experimental internship projects for graduate students and has consulted on doctoral curricular reform with graduate schools across the United States. Her work is supported by a $1.3 million grant from the Humanities Without Walls Consortium and the Mellon Foundation to Marquette University, where she directs reform efforts on behalf of HWW's 16 Midwestern University partners. In 2022, she received the Excellence and Innovation in Graduate Education Award from the Midwestern Association of Graduate Schools. And then last but not least, when I started my first career at UTSA, this was my boss's boss's boss, which was our, at the time, Vice President for Student Affairs at UT San Antonio. So I'm pleased to have Dr. Gage Payne with us. Gage is the founder of Gage Payne Consulting, and a consulting firm designed to support higher education and nonprofit leaders who want to make a difference in their organizations and communities. Known for her creativity, her use of dance, yoga, and poetry in workshops and speeches, and recognized nationally as a leader in higher education, she is sought after as a facilitator, leadership coach, and speaker. Dr. Payne has held appointments as Vice President for Student Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Texas at San Antonio, and Trinity University, and as an Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Student Life at Southern Methodist University. Her resume lists more than 100 speeches, presentations, and panels, including her talk at TEDx San Antonio in 2012. Her publications include book and monograph chapters on such varied topics as communications for new vice presidents, the role of law in assessment and institutional research, and working with students of concern in the campus conduct process. Throughout her career, Dr. Payne has taught at the graduate and undergraduate level, presented at numerous national and regional conferences, and been recognized for her leadership and service in March 2012. She was awarded the Scott Goodnight Award for Outstanding Performance as a dean by NASPA, which is a student affairs organization, National Student Affairs Organization in Higher Education, the National Professional Organization for Student, and recognized as the pillar of the profession by the NASPA Foundation. In June 2011, Dr. Payne was awarded the John Jones Award for Outstanding Performance as a Senior Student Affairs Officer by NASPA Region 3. Dr. Payne has also held leadership roles with the Texas Association of College and University Student Personnel Administrators, which is also called TACUSPA, including serving as president in 1992 and 1993. In 2009, Dr. Payne was awarded the Dr. James E. Caswell Distinguished Service Award for Excellence in Leadership by TACUSPA. In May 2014, the UT Austin program in higher education leadership honored Dr. Payne with the inaugural Dr. V. Ray Cardozier. Thank you, Cardozier Alumni Excellence Award, recognizing a graduate of the doctoral program who has demonstrated excellence in their scholarly and professional work. Dr. Payne earned her PhD in Educational Administration from the University of Texas at Austin, a Doctor of Jurisprudence from Texas Tech University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Letters from the University of Oklahoma. So again, please welcome our panelists. Thank you all so much for being here. And we are going to jump right in. So we've already kind of covered what are your degrees, Landon, but let's talk about from a couple of you. What was your first position in higher education? And LT, let's start with you.
Sure. So my first full-time position was a hall director at East Carolina University.
I love
I was
it.
in the housing area.
Gage, how about you?
Technically, my first position in higher education was RA as an undergraduate.
Mm.
But my first full-time position was Associate Dean of Students at McMurray College, now McMurray University in Abilene, Texas, small Methodist school of about 1,600 students. The great thing about that is that you do everything when you're at a small school. And so I gained a lot of different kinds of experiences by doing that one job in that one small institution.
Nice. And Maggie, how did you get started in higher ed?
Well, I agree with Gage. I feel like my first role many years ago now was when I was in grad school as a research assistant and then a teaching assistant. And then I worked on a small book project and I got a little bit of summer funding from that. But my first full-time role came from the Humanities Without Walls Consortium. So I stepped into that role while I was finishing my PhD all the way back now in 2018. And so that grant project has kind of just evolved into the role that I'm in today in the grad school. So I first directed the workshop, then I worked on the grant renewal, and it just has kind of been a rolling ball since then. And John, I'm actually transitioning into a new role at Marquette now because our grant is sunsetting in 2027. And I haven't told you this yet, but I'm becoming the director of our Humanities Center. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So there's just a kind of like an evolution of that. And as a historian, right, in the humanities, we have other kinds of challenges related to the tenure track job market. So yeah, all those humanists out there, there's hope.
Thanks. And Lorena, how did you decide to kind of stick with higher ed, but the non-professoriate track?
So ever since I started my career in science, I really enjoyed being in the lab. The fact that you get to challenge and have all of these challenging questions and find answers, the creative part of research got me into, okay, I want to stick on that area. I want to be able to discover things like ask more questions, more in depth. So that's why I decided to pursue a postdoctoral position. And these are pretty like short tenure positions, right? And eventually what I want to do is to be able to everything that I've learned here throughout the PhD program and now my postdoc is to use that to translate it into more of a translational type of research. So that's where I'm like leaning more towards.
Okay. And let me kind of branch off of that is how did you get to where you are now? Was this the goal? Your current position, was this the goal that you thought when you started, this is where I'm going to end up in, 10, 15, 20 years, however long? And we'll start with Gage.
No. And the short answer is no. I didn't really have a plan, and I think that's if I have any maybe two messages that are really I think important, and one of them is careers have their own rhythm, and they're not plannable in my experience. Life happens, and the best laid plans go awry, and the most interesting things come out of that. Now, I'm one of those people. I wandered through college, not knowing what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted a career, not a job. And I had to smile, Maggie, when you said you got your PhD way back in 2018. Um, in law school in 1979, there were not the percentage of women that there are now. There were 80 students in my cohort. We were divided into two, and there were 13 women in that cohort. And I went to law school because I didn't have a better plan. And it was in law school when I was preparing to be a hall director that it all of a sudden occurred to me that there were jobs other than professors on university campuses. And I'd never seen myself as a professor. And I've never seen that as a possibility. And when I realized there were these other kinds of jobs, it occurred to me I would like those jobs and I might be good at some of those jobs. And so I finished law school, which is a story in itself, and started looking for jobs in higher education, specifically in student affairs. I knew pretty quickly I wanted to move up into senior leadership, but I didn't have a specific goal or timeline on any level.
Oh, we froze up.
For 11 years. And I say the reason I stayed there so long was because my boss kept finding me interesting things to do. Then I went to SMU and didn't plan to be there only 3 years, except the opportunity at Trinity University knocked on my door. And vice presidencies that look interesting don't always happen on the timeline that you want. And so I went ahead and, went through the application process and left SMU, which was a great job with a great leadership team after 3 years because I didn't want to miss an opportunity. Um, when I came back to UT Austin as vice president, people said, "Oh, you got your dream job." Trust me, I never dreamed I would be vice president at the University of Texas at Austin. But it's the trajectory that worked out. And so different things happened at different paces along the way. And what I do is look for good places to do good work with people who care about what we're doing, where I can make a difference and quite frankly, where I can learn something new and be challenged. That's really important to me. But fundamentally, it's can I make a difference in the life of the people of this institution? Which is why I wanted to be in senior leadership, was because that's how you make a difference in the life of the whole institution. Um, and then after a number of years as vice president, had the opportunity to go into consulting and I hope share all that I learned in my campus work with a lot of different folks in a slightly different way. So, no, this was never a plan. I never had I've got to be a consultant at this point and I have to be a vice president by this point. That was never in there. And if I'd had it, I would have frustrated myself because it worked out on a time frame that I would never have imagined if I had tried to plan it out.
Nice. And Maggie, so tell me, was the goal to always work in a graduate school as an administrator now, moving to your new role and managing a grant for Humanities Without Walls and all that? Was that the plan at the beginning, or how did we end up here?
No, that was not the plan. I don't even know what my plan was. Right. So originally, before I started graduate school, I worked in wealth management and worked in wealth management at a time during the Great Recession. And that experience of seeing people rush in to like use their 401k plans or their 403b plans to actually hold on to their homes because they didn't have income because they were laid off or in like 2008, 2009, I don't know if people remember this, but there were some instances where people were without work for years. And so they had to dip into their retirement funds or just scramble to try to find the resources to hold on to their mortgages. And in a lot of cases they didn't have the resources to do that. So that was a fundamentally kind of transformative moment for me where I knew I wanted to do something in terms of my work that I thought was consistent with my values and that I found meaning in. And so, oh, great. I decided I'm going to go pursue a master's and a PhD in history. Right. And so it was, and I always knew that even at that time, the tenure track job market was tenuous, right, because of partially the Great Recession. But as John, you and I've talked about many times, there's a long history, decades long history of people earning PhDs and not going into tenured positions. So I didn't really have a plan other than pursuing the things that I thought were meaningful and energizing and consistent with my values about in relation to the work that I wanted to do in the world. And then I think I just embraced opportunity. And that's the message I try to share with graduate students all the time. Be open and embrace opportunities. Put yourself into positions where you do good work, where you align your work with your values and when those opportunities emerge, you're ready to grab them. And I know that sounds really kind of vague, but I think if that's at the core of your ethos about the work that you do in the world, it has never failed me. And that doesn't mean I haven't had challenges because I certainly have. And we have navigated so many especially in our current context. And it just is that wave after wave after wave, whether it was the first Trump administration or the pandemic or the second Trump administration. But I think if you can do the work that you do in the world with your values, that won't lead you wrong.
LT, same question. I know in general, kind of your background, and I do know that you were at UT Austin, and so how did we get here?
Yeah. So much like Gage, actually, I started off as a resident assistant. Actually, before that, I started off as a student volunteer in the student union. I was working, they roped me in from being a student volunteer that was working with a comedy series and doing that work. And I loved that. I thought that was what I wanted to do. But the housing folks snatched me from that and encouraged me to become a resident assistant. And my direct supervisor had finished her graduate degree at Western Illinois and encouraged me to consider a career. And I said, "You can have careers in this. This is great." So I tried it out. And as a first generation student, I had no idea what I was doing. I remember very specifically when I was going to interview at Western that they picked me up at the airport. And I heard they had a bunch of us in the van, and all of them were talking about NASPA and ACPA and going to Oshkosh. And these all seemed like foreign words to me. And I was completely clueless about the entire process. I was so far behind in preparing. I think in some ways, it actually was an advantage for me to not throw all the jargon around in the same way because my question at every point in my interest level in a grad program was, how do I help support students who are like me? And no one was asking that question. And so I really think that that stood out. And I remember going back home from the airport. And once I got home, I already had a call waiting for me, offering me a graduate position. And it just continued from there. Much like what Gage mentioned before, I had zero plans for what my career trajectory would look like, even up to this point in this role. When I arrived at UT San Antonio, I started off in a small project position as an office of one. And I worked there for about a year, and we had a crisis on campus. A different group of people were kind of tapped to kind of help figure out the situation. And I remember people were tossing their papers around and reading policies and stuff. And towards the end of meeting, I kind of meekly raised my hand and I asked the question, has anyone asked how the students are doing? Has anyone checked in on the students? And our university president was zoop, he focused right on me. And about 3 months later, I was appointed into an interim dean of students role and just moved up from here.
And there you go. And there you go. Let's talk a little bit about career development, and I'm going to pop over to Lorena. I know you're involved in a lot of the development that the graduate school provides for graduate students and postdocs in professional development. What does career development mean to you, and why do you think it's important?
So, oof. So to me, career development is, especially when I'm working in, or when I'm thinking of me as a researcher that I work in a lab, it's not only learning how to do those techniques and then understand how the scientific process works and learning how to like think critically, but it also involves this part of networking, finding mentors, being a mentor yourself. Um, Especially when you're in an institution that is very undergrad oriented. That's one of the parts that I really enjoy, the mentorship. But I have to learn how to do that too. So that's part of, in my career, part of my professional development. But it's also a lot of what the other panelists have been touching on it's really interesting because that's also something that I'm trying to do, not only for me, but where can I do, or where can I help to make the environment for students, postdocs, and anyone that is in research better, right? The whole point for me, and that's what's like based on my values and my core feelings. What is it that I can do to make things better? And by doing this professional development, trainings, training other students, me attending this courses, that's where it boils down to. For me to be a well-rounded, not scientist, but person that helps into the greater scheme of things, not just for myself.
Nice, thank you. And Maggie, since you do, at least currently, do a similar job to what I do, you're the me in Marquette University, or I'm the you at UT San Antonio. Why do you think that career development is so important, whether it be for graduate students or even getting into the field? What does it mean to you?
Yeah. So that's a complex question. And I think for a long time, at least higher education, generally speaking, did not do a sufficient job of helping graduate students think through these meaningful questions about what their lives would be like after they completed their degrees. And I'm watching the chat, and there's this nice chat about thinking about, because of the conversation, like how do we create programming that is student centered, as opposed to just thinking about how do we advance our faculty's research, or how do we get the experiences necessary to becoming tenure track professors, especially for those of us working on or who have completed PhDs. So we think a lot about that. How do we create programming in the career development, professional development space that leads to student success while they're with us, but that also helps our students find meaningful careers that pays them well, because we all need health insurance if we live in the United States. And that second, at least gives them a sense of, this is why I'm happy I finished a master's degree or a PhD. So that's where we start at. And then, I'm at Marquette. So a big, everything that we do here also aligns with our Jesuit tradition, which is a 500-year-old practice of thinking about discernment. And so we start for our students at, how do you come to know yourself? How do you find those spaces and experiences that will let you know what future career paths might look for you? Is that the space you want to go into the future? And so for us, it's been not just about workshops or brown bag series or thinking about how do you build networks, or how do you have conversations with folks who might be able to help you find what comes next, but also more fundamentally, how can I find that person who can help me discern whether I'm having moments of what we would refer to in the Ignatian tradition as moments of desolation or moments of consolation. An easy way to think about that, if you're not familiar with this tradition, is to think about, where is the work that energizes you, or where is the place in terms of your work that depletes you? And so we need our students to go have internship experiences while they're working on their degrees to see if those jobs might align with their values. And you can't do discernment alone. You have to do discernment in conversation with other people. So mentoring is really critical to all of this as well. That, I think, is at the fundamental core of how we approach our career development and professional development programming at Marquette. But it doesn't end. So I think, as you've heard from the other panelists, right, it is a constant kind of evolution. You will have future transitions. So I think we hope in our programming to give our students a toolkit that they can use for their first placement after they finish their degrees, but for all the future transitions that are going to come. So it never stops. It's a continuous journey. So that's I think at the heart of what career development means to me.
Thank you. And let's springboard off of that. And I'm going to go back to Gage, uh, and ask, what skills are crucial for professionals to develop to advance in leadership positions in higher ed?
Oh, have you got all day? Well, one of the things that I want to say that I think links into that, and Aggie was saying, is this idea of openness to what's out there. Because one of the things that I've told many a parent group in my career is not to worry about their child's major, because their students will have jobs that haven't been invented yet. And that's still true. And it's true for the folks that are here today. It's true that the job may have been invented, you just don't know about it yet. And so there are so many ways to use what you've learned that you can't even imagine because you haven't been shown it yet. And so that's one of the things that's really tricky in all of this, is that
We froze again.
I ask for one sentence about being successful. I say yes to opportunity. I had the opportunity to be on the dais with Dr. Arthur Chickering several years ago, and his version of that was turn toward challenge. Both of which I like for different reasons. And I think that's sort of the message. And then that takes us back to your question, John, about leadership. One of the ways that I see in new professionals the possibility of them moving into higher leadership is their willingness to understand the way the entire operation works. I asked new people, new students, new professionals to be students of their organizations, to really understand how it all fits together and where they are as part of it. Because oftentimes new professionals come out of grad school and they're very excited about what they're doing and they love their new job and they think it's the most important job in the organization, university, or any other kind of organization. And it may be, but probably not. And it fits in with a bunch of other things. And so understanding what's happening at your organization, understanding why your job even exists in your organization, but why those other jobs do as well. Connecting with folks so that you understand One of the ways you get things done in big organizations is you know who to call, you know who to ask for help, you know who to give help to help them achieve what they want to do. So it's really about, again, there's so many things I could say about what it means to how you get to leadership, but I would focus on, as a starting point, is truly understanding your organization. Even if you change organizations, the lessons you learn in organization one will stand you in good stead in organizational two. It's particularly true if you move from university to university, but it's true if you move into other kinds of organizations as well. So be a student of organizations and say yes to opportunities. And you'd be surprised how many times that yes and that willingness, like LT's example, to speak up and tell your truth leads you to leadership opportunities earlier than you might even be ready.
That is very true. And to go over to LT, and in that same vein, what strategies do you employ to mentor and empower your team members in student affairs or anywhere in the university?
Yeah, so I'll take that from kind of two perspectives. So from an overall mentorship perspective, I encourage individuals to create an individual board of directors, a personal board of directors. And for me, that means identifying people who have strengths that support you personally and professionally based on their level of expertise. So I have 5 members in my personal board of directors. They range from previous students that I've worked with, professionals who have been in my orbit over time, people who are outside of the field. They're all types within it because I gain different perspectives from each one of them, and I need different things from each person. And I've asked very specifically what I would appreciate having in order to get that level of support. For some people, I reach out to them every other week or so, and we help support each other. And then there's other folks, I email them once or twice a semester, and others I know I'm going to see at a conference every year, so we just have a coffee during that time. So having that personal board of directors and giving them specific details about what the expectations are between you and them in that mentorship relationship can go a very long way. It took me multiple years to cultivate this group. So it isn't a one and done. You're not just going to send a group of emails to folks and do it. You cultivate it over time. So that's my first encouragement for people to develop their personal board of directors. The second one that I highly encourage when I'm working directly with our team, the skill set that I use is transformative leadership. And so in that, I recognize that different staff members are going to need different things. I have newer people who have just joined the team, and they're going to need a more directive approach because they need to continue to learn about the organization, the culture, the campus. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant when they first get here. So I'm working with them in a completely different way than I would with a senior level professional who's been here maybe even longer than me. So for them, I guide from the side. I am not dictating what they do or need to do. I'm more kind of probing from a perspective of what are some additional opportunities to kind of push and encourage you a little bit more. So that transformative style in my leadership is the way that I help encourage and support the team.
Thank you. And you mentioned mentoring, and couple have mentioned around is they've talked about their networks, which I think networking is highly valuable and very important in any career, but especially in higher ed. Maggie, what did networking what role did that play in the career you're in now?
Yeah. I mean, that's partially how I came to know you too, right?
Yes.
So sometimes, in our work with Humanities Without Walls and the PhD students, especially that we worked with through our fellowship program, oftentimes we'll see doctoral students get a little nervous about that word networking. What do you mean networking? It's sometimes the term itself has this implication that it's self-serving or it's kind of mechanistic or like what it feels kind of corporate-y, right? And especially for the humanists that I work with, that can also like set off like, hairs rise up a little bit. So instead, to what LT was discussing, I like to refer to it as really you're building relationships with human beings, right? And that's really what it is. How do you build your friendships? How do you build meaningful relationships? And John, our relationship, I think, is a great example of this, in that I had a colleague at Marquette who saw you speak at a conference a number of years ago now, probably 2016, 2017, when you had built the center at UTSA. And as she saw me launching into the work that I was doing for Humanities Without Walls and Marquette and for, the graduate students we were trying to support, she said, Maggie, I think you should reach out to John Schaffer and see if he might be willing to engage in an informational interview with you. And so I thought, oh, that's great. So I looked you up. I saw the things that you were doing at UTSA, and I sent you an email. I think that's how it went. And you were just so gracious and warm. And it's amazing how when you just lead with authenticity and genuineness and sincerity, people respond to that. So I sent you an email and said, would you be willing to, engage in an informational interview with me virtually? And you said, this is before the pandemic. And you said, absolutely. And so we chat. I actually think we chatted on the phone as opposed to like on Zoom or
did.
Teams, right?
We
And you
did.
taught me so much in that moment. And that relationship has just grown from there. And we've continued to network. We've continued to think about how can we be reciprocal in that relationship. So two of our guiding principles at Humanities Without Walls is thinking about how we build reciprocal and redistributive relationships. And so that also, alongside being genuine, sincere, and open, is also, I think, critical to that. So I think, relationship building, and I really like the idea of building that personal board of directors. And John, you might be on that board of directors. So anyway, and always kind of like coming back and thinking about where the spaces you can continue to collaborate, continue to learn from one another, share best practices, and building that community that helps. At least for me personally, it's helped bring joy into the work that I do, especially in moments where you might need a little bit of resilience for the things that the troubles we might be navigating. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to do one last question before I open it up to the group. And this is a question that I'm going to ask of each of the panelists is what advice, and we'll start with Lorena, what advice would you give your past self as you were starting your career in this field?
Oof. I mean, I think it's pretty early on my career, but I think the word is resilience. I think in the beginning, especially, it was in the middle of COVID when I was in the middle of my PhD program too, so that was extremely challenging. But thanks to my mentors and my family, I was able to pull through and actually, finish. So I think a lot of those times it's just like, I think I can't do this anymore. So I guess what I would tell myself is to give myself a little bit more credit. And then, that if you have this idea in your head, like it just push through, because more likely you will be able to achieve it. So give yourself a little more credit that all this might look crazy ideas are achievable. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm carrying that over on my future career. Like at this point, I'm trying to think like, what can I do with my degree? And honestly, it seems like there's so endless opportunities for me. So that's where I'm like landing on right now. Just believe in yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Gage, same question. What advice would you give your past self?
I think I would say be a little, well, no, I would say be a little braver. And I got some early opportunities because people invited me into them. If they hadn't invited me into them, I'm not sure I would have done. Well, I know I was asked to do a presentation. I fresh out of law school. We're doing student affairs. We have a student affairs law conference. Somebody sees that's a great idea and asked me to do a presentation. So I did a presentation much earlier in my career than I would have ever done on my own. Left to my own devices, I might not still have done one. I mean, quite frankly, it was that bad in those early years. And so being willing to get out there, find somebody to write with, find somebody to present with, find somebody to engage with on a topic that you find interesting. I think that would have helped me early to be more confident early on, and to have started building, that web of relationships, if we don't like the word network. Because that presentation, I met my next boss, and then I met my third boss, the same thing. And so those professional organizations, you learn a lot, but you meet people who nurture you and who teach you and who support you, and who, when you're really lucky, you get to turn and give that back. um, get out there. To say to myself, get over yourself. I'm not saying that to y'all, but get over yourself and get out there and really um, show your stuff. I didn't do that very well early on.
And LT, what advice would you give yourself?
So when I was in the 6th grade, my math teacher said that I was stupid. He used that phrase specifically. And it made me a very not confident student. I found out later that I had undiagnosed dyscalculia. And the reason why I share that is because I allowed for much of my life and career to have imposter syndrome um, really impact the way that I moved in the world. Now that I know more about imposter syndrome, I would tell myself, don't allow imposter syndrome. I've shifted that now to imposter moments. Don't let those moments hinder you from your interests. I'll leave it at that.
Love that. Love that. Maggie, we'll end with you on the prescribed questions. So what advice would you give yourself?
Well, first, I love that story, LT. That's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. I would say, I would tell my past self, change is going to happen. Your leaders who you trust are going to lead or leave. There's going to be those transitions, and you cannot stop it. You have to accept it. And learning how to navigate those transitions is something that you're going to have to figure out when they come. And so the one way that I have learned is to kind of accept it. And sometimes accepting means you have to let go of a thing. And I've kind of am going through that experience right now with moving into this new role. But what's amazing is when you let go of a thing, even if it's the thing that you have built and you have moved it forward, you have to sometimes accept that it's grown to a certain level where you have to let it go and hand it off to others. And that is really, really hard to do. But once you do that, if you've done the groundwork, if you've been open to opportunity, if you've built your relationships, if you've, let go of the things that hold you back, right? Like the imposter syndromes or those imposter moments, opportunity will emerge. And then you can say yes to the new thing that's going to take you in a different direction.
Agreed. Thank you all so much. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording.